Hey, Shalom, this is the brother Bud. You're back here once again. Before I get started, like always, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakha HaKadosh. Double honors to my teachers, the elder apostles of Great Millstone, and Shalom to the hopeful elect. I'm going to title this video, Sow Where You Want to Reap. Sow where you want to reap. All right? The word sow in the Hebrew is zarai. Zarai, all right? Reading from right to left in the Hebrew, you have the Zar character, which looks like a I in the English, the Ra character, and the I character, which looks like a O in English, but Zarai, right? You have the Zar character, the Ra character, and the I character, which gives you the word sow, okay? And reason I want to do this video is because the Lord, our power, the Most High, Yahweh, Abba Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, have set forth the earth in a way that wherever you sow, that's what you're going to reap from. That's where you're going to reap from, all right? So whatever land you sow in, that's where you're going to reap your harvest or your fruit from. Whatever you sow, that's what you're going to reap. So if I sow, let me just use any random example. If I have land in Kentucky and I sow in Kentucky, well, that's where I'm going to reap at, right? If I sow a crop of vegetables, whatever type of vegetable you can think of in Kentucky, where I can't expect to reap a fruit tree or cherries or whatever, because I sold squash, or potatoes, right? I can't expect to sow potatoes and then when I go to reap it, I'm expecting cherries, or you know what I'm saying. So you reap what you sow, all right. And where you sow is where you gather your harvest from. That applies to everything that we do in life. That's how the Lord set up the earth. If you sow into a woman, you're going to reap whatever comes with that woman. That's what you've been sowing your time, sowing your money, your resources, sowing your attention. You're going to reap whatever comes with that woman. If she's a wicked woman, well, you're going to receive her wicked actions. She may cause you headaches. She may cause you distractions. If you sow towards a woman with some type of sense, where, you may have a more peaceful relationship there, depending on where you sow, whatever woman you're dealing with. If you're sowing to your flesh, all right, your lust, whether it be you're a drunkard, your alcohol, you're going to reap the effects of being a drunkard, all right? And that comes with a lot of things. That comes with illnesses, that comes with being unhealthy, that comes with making a fool out of yourself when you get around people. All right. If you sow to your anger and your emotions, you're going to reap what comes with that. All right. You find yourself in situations, you get angry. Instead of practicing the fruits of the spirit, you decide to sow to your anger and your emotions, and you make a rash and hasty decision, which a lot of times causes men to reach their downfall and their destruction. But you're going to reap where you sow. All right. And you're going to reap what you sow. That's how the Lord set it up. Zarai. Let's get Galatians 6th chapter. And I hope the analogies I used came across clearly. Galatians chapter 6, verse 7, right? It says, "Be not deceived. Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is not mocked. For whatever, let me read that again, Salakia. Be not deceived. Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Like I said, whatever you reap, that's what you're gonna. Whatever you sow, that's what you're gonna reap. You can't decide to sow carrots, and then when it's time for harvesting season, you're expecting to reap, fucking plums or whatever. Like that's not how shit work. Verse 8: For he that showeth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. And the average man, the carnal man, the natural man, sows to his flesh. And a lot of times you reap corruption because the flesh is sown in corruption. The flesh is built in corruption. All right? The flesh represents sin. That's why you die in the flesh. All right? Chains of darkness. If you constantly sow into the flesh, you're going to reap fleshly things. And sometimes that may be beneficial, You may be able to get some type of beneficial things from sowing to the flesh. For example, like if you work out and you have a strict routine, you're going to see your body transform, to your liking, as long as you're doing the proper techniques and, doing the things necessary to, shape your body the way you want. Or if you practice any type of martial arts, and this is just a vague example, but, if you're doing well in that martial arts and you're disciplined, you're going to get better at whatever skill you're learning, wherever you're applying yourself. But at the end of the day, that carries very little weight in the grand scheme of life, all right? Fleshly things, right? If you have no control over your mind, you have no control over your body. For example, I'll use another vague example, like a guy that, a glutton, for instance, right? America's known for obesity. People don't know how to control their hunger. It really is not hunger. It's just you for one, you have an improper diet. You consume a lot of sugar. You consume a lot of artificial products, so you stay hungry. Because you don't eat a proper diet that gives you nutrients and minerals and vitamins, you're always hungry. But you always fill yourself up with more junk, right? You just sow into the flesh, and really you should be learning about what the body requires to sustain energy and to sustain a healthy, healthy organs and, keep your body in a healthy state. But sowing to the flesh, you're going to reap corruption because the flesh wants what it wants when it wants it, all right? And, that's the natural state of a beast. If an animal wants to have sex, it's going to do whatever it takes to have that sex, or whether they got to, murder to get it, steal it to get it, whatever. They're going to do whatever it takes to get it. If a man is poor and he has no control, he's going to do whatever it takes to get money. He's going to rob, he's going to cheat, he's going to steal, he's going to do whatever it takes to get that. Sowing to the flesh shall reap corruption. But continuing reading, it says, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Because, see, the scriptures teach us if you store your riches in heaven, moth, rust does not get on your things that's stored in heaven, like here on earth. A thief can't come in and steal it, and it can't be corrupted because it's with the Lord. And not only that, spiritual gifts and, spiritual attributes, they're beneficial to your daily walk, your daily life, all right? They teach you patience and temperance, which is temperance is self-control. They teach you, how to walk uprightly in the sight of the Lord. And you're able to have a more peaceful life when you walk in these things because it gives you understanding of your situation and your environment. This world is so dark, so violent, and so corrupt that if you don't have any understanding or comfort or peace of what's going on around you, it can cause you to lean upon what the flesh sees as comfort, whether that be any type of drug, any type of alcoholic beverage, any type of woman, anything that the flesh craves, any type of food, whatever, because it's seeking for some type of comfort. When really, if you sow to the Spirit, you're going to receive the necessary comfort that you need to keep yourself from sowing so much to the fleshly side, right? Verse 9, it says, and let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And that's the point. Like, you have to continue to sow to the Spirit. You have to continue to sow in this ministry. You have to continue to sow amongst the brotherhood. And you can't get weary because you've been in this thing a few years, you know, and your life is still, you know, filled with ups and downs and stressful moments. You can't get weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap. All right. So when it's harvest time to come, when harvest time arrives, you're gonna reap what you have sown. It's like any farmer would tell you. The hardest part is sowing, tilling the land, checking on your crops, making sure no underground rodents have gotten to certain crops, making sure no bugs have eaten up certain crops, making sure the weather has not affected certain crops. And sometimes you may have to start all over, depending on if it was sown in good soil. Because if it was sown in bad soil, it's gonna all come up rotten and destroyed. So it's a very tedious process, and a lot of farmers quit. You got these homesteaders. They'll tell you in the beginning it's very, very stressful. It causes even a lot of them get into a state of depression from the beginning stages of sowing and tilling and managing their own land. But once they finally get a pattern and a rhythm and consistency and diligence, and they know what they're doing, they stay on that path. And when it's time to reap, it's plentiful. It's plentiful. So we have to continue to sow what the Lord wants us to sow. And when the time for us to reap arrives, it will be plentiful, because the Lord is not an unjust power. We serve a just power. Okay. From there, let's get 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, verse 6. It says, but this I say, he which soweth sparingly shall reap also sparingly, and he which soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. So you want to make sure you're giving your all within this truth. All right. You want to make sure you're giving your all, putting your best foot forward, whether that be dealing with brothers, or whether that be your work or labor within the ministry, or whether that be chipping off that old man and putting on that new man and walking right in the sight of the Lord, and applying the fruits of the Spirit to your life, the attributes and the traits that the Lord delights and wants to see in his servants and his sons. And you got to give it to the best of your ability. And when you find yourself not doing the best that you can, you got to rebuke yourself and examine yourself, whether you be in the faith, scrutinize yourself, or you may need to take rebuke from other brothers. But regardless, you need to make sure you continually examine yourself, just like a farmer or a homesteader has to examine their land constantly to make sure everything's on track. The moment you don't examine and watch what you're doing, you can find yourself completely off course of what you're supposed to be doing. All right, and that will cause you not to reap, because everything has just went off course. Let's get Ecclesiastes, the 11th chapter, verse 6. It says, in the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thy hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper, either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. Yeah, so you got to going back to my original point, you got to make sure you're monitoring your seed and where you sown your seed and what type of seed you have sown. Is it a righteous seed or not? And you got to monitor that and take care of that and water that properly, because you don't know what it shall be in the time of harvesting season, in the time of reaping season, right? Let's get Genesis, the 8th chapter. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22, and this is after the flood, during the time of Noah. And this is what the Lord told us. This is why in the beginning of this video I said, the Lord set up the earth this way. Genesis chapter 8, verse 22, it says, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So as long as the earth abideth, You're gonna have seed time. You're gonna have harvest time. You're gonna have cold, and you're gonna have heat. For certain crops, the cold destroys them. For certain crops, the heat destroys them. Too much heat destroys them. Too much cold will destroy them. You gotta know. You gotta make sure what you're sowing, when you're sowing it, and where you're sowing it at. Certain crops are not designed to be sown in the winter. Certain crops are not designed to be sown in the summer. You got to know what you're tending to. It's just like in this spirit of ours. There's certain things you need to work on at certain times. There's certain places you need to apply yourself more than other places. All right. If you know that you're good at precepts, but you lack in charity or patience or temperance, self-control, or managing your affairs, well, you need to be applying yourself there. Don't be applying yourself in just learning more precepts. You got to know what season you're in, where you need to sow your seed, which seed, and what seed you need to tend to. Because really, we're sowing multiple seeds within the spirit. If you have the understanding to realize that. All right. And that's why we're constantly. No man should be prideful in this thing, because we have so much that we all need to work on, every last single one of us. Because all of us are wicked in the eyes of the Most High. The only way you are looked at as cleansed is through the blood of Hamashiach Yahushua. And that's only if you're tending to yourself according to the ways that Yahushua Hamashiach would like for a servant to tend to himself. All right. From there, let me get Jeremiah, the 4th chapter. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 3, right? This is what the Lord commanded the sons of Yashala to do. It says, "For thus saith the Lord power Yahweh to the men of Judah and Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground and sow not among thorns." Now I got it pulled up, but this is fallow ground, right? It says, fallow ground is land that has been plowed and tilled, but is left unseeded for a period to restore its fertility. So it's just like when you come into this truth, the Lord talks about being a newborn babe. Well, the fallow ground is now new and fresh, right? But no seeds have been planted in that ground yet, all right? Continue reading. It says, in a metaphorical sense, it represents to an inactive or uncultivated state, such as spiritual life that has become stagnant, requiring breaking up or renewal to become fertile again and produce spiritual growth. Because if you're not, if that fallow ground is not, broken up properly or hasn't been plowed or tilled properly, you can't even sow there. It's not gonna reap any good crop. It's not gonna reap any fruits of righteousness. So a lot of times you may be in this truth, and you may have to start all over your spiritual land. You may be in this truth 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, even more. And there may be certain areas you might have to start all over again and start tilling and plowing that certain area again, right? And start breaking up that fallow ground again and start the renewal process there. So you can sow better seeds there, right? Right, says the definition: land that is plowed and prepared for crops, but left unplanted for one or more seasons. Purpose: to allow the soil to regain its nutrients and moisture, improving future yields. That goes into the land having a Sabbath. We're supposed to give up the land a Sabbath, but it says modern day. It says the practice is less common with modern agriculture, which sometimes prioritizes immediate use over long-term soil health. And that's the point. That's why a lot of the crops and food that we get is fake, because the land is not yielding its fruit properly. So Esau goes into the lab and creates these copycat foods that don't have seeds in it, right? Since he's not able to plant the seeds in the ground of the earth, because he's not allowing the earth to rejuvenate and renew itself so that it can be broken up and then allow the seed to be planted. He doesn't have time. He's about money. So he just wants to get it out fast. So he's going to create these seedless foods these fake foods, right? But the Lord ain't dealing with no splicing. The Lord ain't dealing with no fake shit. All right. If you lack seed, you ain't making it on no chariot. The Lord ain't dealing with nobody that lacks that hasn't planted seeds and reduced and produced any fruits. Anybody that hasn't yielded any fruit shall be accursed in the sight of the Lord. Just like when Hamashiach Yahushua cursed that fig tree that didn't produce any figs. Right? Going to the spiritual point, it says, a spiritual or personal state that is stagnant, inactive, or unproductive. Now, like I said, you may be good in precepts, but you may be stagnant or inactive or unproductive in other areas. You may not be doing your videos. You may not be charitable brother. You may not be a humble brother. You may not have self-control over certain emotions or certain behaviors that you do. All right. Well, you gotta prepare to break up that ground. Prepare that area for a renewal process. All right. Start putting on the new man in that area. All right. It says the action here, breaking up the fallow ground, is a metaphor for actively working to overcome spiritual or personal stagnation by renewing one's commitment to spiritual practices, addressing shortcomings, and seeking a fresh start. Exactly. This ain't just about when you first come into the truth, because when you first come into the truth, your journey just begins. This ain't no fucking carnal Baptist religion shit or whatever, this fake Christianity shit where you dip your head in some dirty water and you come up a new person. No, you constantly have to break up the ground and till that ground and sow to that area. And if you fail in that area again, you gotta throw all that shit away and start all over. All right. It says a renewed and fertile heart that can better receive spiritual input and produce good fruit. And that's the point. Okay. So the Lord said, you men of Judah and Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground and sow not among thorns. Yeah, because if you sow among thorns, you got to start all over, because you can't. How the hell you going to pull up your crops, pull up any type of fruit or vegetation, and you got thorns all in the field, man? You're going to cut yourself. All right. From there, and I'm gonna end this over here in Genesis chapter 26. This is a carnal example, but it shows you how you apply it to the spirit. You know, it shows you why the Lord said we should be rich in due season. This is Genesis chapter 26, verse 12, going into our forefather Isaac. Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year an hundredfold. And the Lord blessed him. The Lord power Yahweh blessed him. Remember, the Lord said, he that forsake mothers, fathers, sister, brother, wives shall receive a hundredfold, right? Verse 13, and the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. And he had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants. And the Philistines envied him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with the earth. So yeah, it goes into Isaac becoming rich because he sold in that land, worked his ass off, tilled that land, plowed that land, cultivated that land. All right, broke up the fallow ground in that land and seed the proper seed where it needed to be sown. And so when the harvest time came, he was able to reap bountifully.